Hey everybody, I hope that you have remembered that I am still around, and today we'll be doing a Mudblazor video. Now, I know a lot of you wanted Maui first, but I did Maui already before in the last video. Check it out if you can after this one. And now we'll be doing Mudblazor because I did promise I would get into that. Now, today's video is we're not going to be going over components specifically like I did in the other one from a very long time ago. Instead, we'll be going over an issue that plagues Mudblazor. That is with CSS. Now, if you don't know what Mudblazor is, here's a small little refresher, which I shall pull up right here. Boom. So Mudblazor essentially is just you applying material design to your Blazor projects. You can do it either through applying them directly to a pre-made Blazor project, or you can have a Mudblazor pre-made project and then use that to start with. And these are how your buttons will look like, etc. This is all material design stuff. Now, what the nice thing about this is that this allows us to not really think about too much when it comes to CSS and styling, especially if you don't like that stuff. Now, as a full stack developer, I have to deal with it to some degree, but I will say that that kind of front end stuff is not really for me. And usually there's another person, a UI UX developer, that handles all that stuff. And thank God I'm not that, because I really hate this. But you still have to deal with it anyways, because you will be the ones implementing this and then positioning them on the sometimes you'll deal with positioning on the actual website and web applications itself. However, Mudblazor has a bit of an issue when it comes to actually customizing it. There are ways to do it, and I'm going to be going over that today. So we'll be just going over some how do we customize Mudblazor stuff, especially when there's not really a very obvious way of doing so. With that being said, there is something that I would like to turn your attention to. So whenever you have to work with Mudblazor, you can go through all these components, and then if you click on the actual API, you will see what kind of parameters you're allowed to use within that component. So if you're ever lost as to how to work with something, you could just press that button that I pressed there, and then it will show you all the stuff it has. So it usually has it categorized by what they are. And what we're interested today is this thing here, the style. So what style allows us to do for most components have style as a common parameter, is that it lets you put inline code for the stylings of whatever it is you're working on. So in case you are in a rut and you don't know what to do, then you can rely on using style in order to fix your problems with like positioning or doing other stuff, especially with the topic I'm going to talk about today. Now, another thing I want to show you is if I write Mudblazor CSS Isolation, we go to the Mudblazor stuff here, and there is going to be some discussion as to how to actually implement Mudblazor with CSS Isolation. And I'm going to show you that there are some issues with it and a possible fix. It's not a very good fix in my opinion. I don't think this really solves the problem, but it would allow you to get through the issue, because this has been a topic when it comes to Blazor and when it comes to Mudblazor as well. So let's just begin. We'll start it here. So we're going to start with just a new Mudblazor project. So just open up your Visual Studio, and we'll be creating a brand new project here. So I'm just going to that. So what I'm demonstrating to you today is applying your own customized CSS stylings and the issues you might have. So I already have I went through the steps of downloading Mudblazor already, and if you haven't done that, you could look at the Mudblazor docs to see the steps, or you go to my video that shows you how to do it as well. But we're just say that you're at this stage already, and we're just gonna make a Mudblazor project here. We'll call it style. And we're just going to create a server one. It really doesn't matter which one you choose. I just want to work with some CSS, so we don't really care. This is the fastest one. So here we are. We have our new project ready to go. So let us look at these pages here. So I'm not going to run it right now, or we'll run it when we get a chance. But what I want to show you is examples of using CSS and some elements that are inside of the inside Mudblazor that's available for you, and just using styles, using CSS isolation, or attempt to use it, because we will discover some interesting problems that it has and how to fix those problems. So the very easy thing that we can do right now is just add a page. So we're going to add a new Razor page. And we're going to be working with that mostly. So I'm going to add that in there. Razor component. We will call this, boy, it's too much stuff on my desk. We're going to call this style test. Right now we have a new component here. It's called style test. And don't forget that anytime you add something, we have to also add it to the nav menu if you want to access it, and then add the actual page URI. So we're just going to copy this. I'm going to call it style test. I didn't add the page URI, but we'll just add it right now. And we're also going to call this style test as well. And then up here, you want to add the page URI slash test. So, oh no, style test, my bad. That's how I spelled it. Style test slash that's perfect. So now we have our Razor component. Now we could access through the nav link. And we're going to attempt to do some very basic stuff that Mudblazor offers. So the first thing I want to do is just add a button to this. Actually, no, before we do that, I'm going to show you how to change the themes real quick, because I think it's really interesting how it looks like afterwards. So, no, not here. Go to the layout. Where is it? Main layout, actually. Yeah, right here. So up here we have these three important components that are required for you to run your Mudblazor project correctly. And we're going to be changing the theme to the dark theme. So this is one of the first things you can do. So if you don't want to see that like very bright theme, this is a nice way of, making it look a little bit more, more to my liking, at least. I don't know if you like that sort of thing, but we will be adding this to it. So whenever you want to change the theme, you can do it this way. There's a built-in theme called @bind is dark mode, and then all we have to do is just make this Boolean, basically. Now we could turn it on or off whenever we want to. So in case you've never seen the dark theme before, @bind is dark mode, and then you give it a Boolean. We're just going to be running it real quick. Then it's going to look nice and cool. There we go. So now you are one step above the rest with a dark theme. Dark themes are really nice. And that's all there is to it. So you've just changed this. Now, if you're wondering what's going on with this giant spacing, we're going to fix that too. So consider this just a little extra customization. So we're going to get rid of that. And we run that again, and you'll see that we've basically taken out the that spacing that was going on there. I don't like that spacing. I don't know why it does that or why it was built like that, but now you see the spacing is a little bit better, and that's where you would want to customize. So maybe you want to add like a little bit, but that was a massive amount of spacing. So in case you want to know, it was here in the mud container, and then you could add whatever you want here to do the spacing your way, but I just don't like that big space there. So already our theme is looking very good. But let us get to, I don't need that no more. I don't need that no more. Let's get to some testing. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to create a MudButton. We're not going to do anything crazy with this, but we would call it test 1. Just to show off, you could do some custom stuff with it here. So if I went to the MudButton, you can do these things off the bat. So if I just copy pasted one of them, you'll get whatever I copy pasted here. But obviously, I've already shown this before in a different video, and I'm not just going to reiterate over this again. What I want to do is show you style. So within MudButton, you actually have a style in there. You have a style parameter in here. And here it takes up inline styling. So what I want to do is just change the background to I don't know, let's say white. And let's say the border is 2 pixel red. I think that would change it. If not, I'll just go into my the thing I have on the side and we'll just copy and paste what I have there. But I believe this should change it to whatever I just customized it to. Well, it did change it to white. It didn't really change the border to what I wanted to change it to. Probably because I wrote it wrong. So I'm gonna rewrite that to border 4 pixel solid red, and I think that should do it. And the reason why I'm doing all this Mudblazor stuff because I want to do a Mudblazor video, and then when I was trying to change the CSS, I ran into so many problems. This is why I think this is a pretty good video because you might run into these problems too if you feel like customizing any of the CSS here. As you can see, I was able to change test 1 into with my border and whatever I wrote. I just changed the border. I didn't change the background in this one. So that is one way of trying to change the CSS. Now, let's try another way to change the CSS. This time, I want to put this in CSS isolation. So if you don't remember how to do that, I'm just going to show it to you now. Don't worry, you don't need to go to another video for it, even though I did make one for it. If you want to help me out, you could always watch it, but I'm not going to, we're not going to bother with that. So we're going to create a new CSS page. So we're going to make a new item. And we're going to do something called a code behind CSS or whatever. I forgot what the actual proper name is, but it's something like that. So we want to look for the CSS file. Here it is. And make sure you give it the same name, minus style test razor.css. And that should automatically, associate that with this. And what we're going to do, I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm getting rid of all the extra stuff that I don't need. Is we're just going to make another one. Nah, we don't have to make another. We'll just copy paste this border here. And yeah, so we're not going to give it any style within. We're going to do the CSS isolation piece. And in order to do that for the mud button, you need to do this. Deep dot mud button. This is, we need to do the colon deep is because your components are nested together. So if you haven't seen what's actually going on here, if you go to the main layout, this whole thing is what's happening. So in order for you to actually reach the CSS or to reach these components with the style sheet, you need to do this, to add this in front of them. So if you see that yours isn't working, this is probably one of the reasons why, but it's not going to be the whole reason, and you'll see why. So this should be okay. In fact, let's just run it and see. So I shouldn't have to do anything more, and my mud buttons on this page should reflect that CSS style sheet. But as you can see, nothing's happening. Nothing's different. My CSS style sheet didn't work. But if I were to do it like this, let's just copy that. I'm just putting it back and put test 2. You'll see that this one will work. Like this one is the same, but I don't really need this. We're just gonna work on our custom-made mud buttons basically. So as you can see, the style, the one you do inline does work, but the one that you expect the CSS isolation to actually affect, well, it would affect both of them. It's just that you wouldn't tell the difference, but it's not affecting this one. So what is happening here? Unfortunately, this is one of the problems when it comes to Mudblazor out of the box. And in order to fix it is kind of an annoying fix that we have to do. So the first thing that is part of the problem is the fact that it's missing both like a link that you need within the main layout and within the actual layout where all the Mudblazor stuff happens, and also a style sheet you need as well. So to fix that, you have to go here. And if you compared it to like an actual Mudblazor project, you'll see that it's missing something here. It's missing an actual style sheet that's related to your project. So in that case, I'm just going to copy and paste what I have on this other side, but we're going to change it to our own. So this is one of the things that is missing. And you want to put this at the bottom before the component piece. So it's missing this href here, and this cannot be, this has to absolutely be the name of your project. So my project is not named this. My project is called Mudblazor Templates Style with no test at the end. That was the other project that I'm working on. And whatever your project name is, .styles.css, you need that down here. That's the first thing you need. The other thing you need is another CSS file, because usually within Blazor, not Mudblazor, but within a normal Blazor project, you have CSS in the www root. So we're gonna need one here. You don't have to write anything in there, but you do need a style sheet in there. So if I write a new style in there, style sheet, we'll call it style sheet test. Is that what I call this? No, it's just called style sheet. I'm just gonna call it style sheet global. Let's just not get lost in the weeds here. So this has to exist, and in fact, this could be empty. You don't have to write anything in here. But now that that's in there, we could add that to the style sheet. So, and we're probably gonna have to reconfigure some of the order that this goes in. So add this on top of this thing here, whatever the name that you gave it. So mine was style sheet global, correct? Yeah, style sheet global. So I'm gonna change that to that. Add that on top of this style.css sheet. And then for this, I want you to flip where this goes. Go put that down here and put the mudblazor.min.css there. So these two things came with Mudblazor, and these two things what Mudblazor kind of like removed. So that's what we want to do. Now we've changed all this, and this in theory should help change the Mudblazor CSS. So now I'm just gonna get rid of this test one. So I'm just gonna get rid of the style for it, and we're gonna run it again. Oh, don't tell me I'm seeing. See what happens if I do that. Yep, there it is. That's the issue. So if you don't know what I just did, is that you have to wrap the MudButton, or you have to wrap the components in an HTML piece, basically. So that's why it didn't work for this one, but it worked for this one. So if I were to add this right into this div here, it will work for both of them. So yeah, trying to figure this out was a giant pain in the ass. So not only was your main layout in the wrong order, you also have to make sure that you put this within HTML itself in order for it to work with your CSS isolation. But wait, there is more. So we just saw that my CSS works as I expected it to work, except I'm using mudbutton.text. So if I actually remove this, it should still work the same. But if not, then maybe that's my CSS that I got wrong. But we'll see. I think it should work the same. Yeah. So it works the exact same regardless if I use MudButton or MudButton text. It doesn't matter because they're both classes that the MudButton has. So it makes no difference. So now I'm gonna remove this from the CSS isolation. In case you don't know, this is the isolation, the CSS that's isolated to this one page. So we're gonna try adding it to the global CSS. So right now, our CSS isolation has nothing, and the global one has the exact same CSS I'm using. Ta-da! There you go. Now this, I have not found a good fix for this, unfortunately. I've seen a lot of talk in the GitHub stuff, and I tested a lot of things out. I gave up testing this. Apparently, I can't get this to work globally. So, at the very minimum, I was able to get the CSS isolation to work and not break things along the way. As long as you follow this order of things, Mudblazor min.css and Google APIs.com, then your style sheet, global style sheet is. Now, I think the reason why you need this, you might actually not need this. In fact, let's just test it out. I think just the order of this is fine. I think that href is what's needed for real. The missing href that has your actual project name in it. So yeah, you might not need that, but I would just have it there anyway, just in case. I'm pretty sure there's something cached, there's something going on that's cached in the background that uses this or is looking for this, and without it, it kind of breaks. So this was the magic that I had to do to make this work for me. And now you have CSS isolation in Mudblazor. Now the good news is that I don't think that you'll have a problem with this if I were to just work for something like pure HTML. So if I were to just do something like and write a button test 3, and in here give the button a class, and give the class a button class. And we do the same thing. You still will need the deep you still need the deep keyword here, but you could just call it button class. And I'll just change this a little bit. We're gonna call this, I don't know, make it blue. Yeah, cadet blue, why not? Background, make that red. And then we'll make the border, I don't know, purple. Did it accept it? Solid. And you know what? We'll go with dashed. And we'll go with. No, we had cadet blue is green, so we'll stick with red. Why not? We'll just be dashed instead. But yeah, it does work. I think this is what I put cadet blue in here. I don't know what's happening with the background is red. The color of this is cadet blue. So maybe if I just swap them up, made this red, we'll see it better. Perfect. Well, yeah, you can do this. It looks ugly, but you could do something like this. So you could still work with normal HTML stuff by doing something like that. But if you were, let's say, someone that is used to, I don't know, if you're used to like the JQ grid stuff, you're used to Bootstrap stuff, the closest thing that we got to Bootstrap in there is called the Mud Grid. If you don't know what the Mud Grid is, I'm just going to copy paste it here. So don't worry, I'm not doing anything that isn't here. If we go to the grid, this is probably the closest to how Bootstrap does its grids and columns. So if you ever need something that works like this to do your separation, then using this basic grid stuff is probably the closest way you can do it in Mudblazor. And the reason why I say this is because I am very used to doing it that way. Did I write an extra div in there? Is that why things are breaking? It's probably why. So yeah, Let's just run that and see what happens. So I just copied this directly from the website. I didn't do any changes to it. It's just to show you that that is how it will look like on screen. And this is, and I bring this up for those of us that have used Bootstrap before, that if you're looking for a Bootstrap way of doing things, you have to use this grid to do it with. And it will have this little elevations and stuff, but you could deal with that through CSS, through style. So the ways you can do this are, let me see. Order. Blue. And I believe this will follow the CSS, the rule set that the style will be taken up by that. So I believe it is blue, but you just can't see it. So yeah, it did take up the border here. I just don't have the pixels. So the last thing you need to know is that sometimes if this doesn't work for you, let's see right here, you have to do something like this. Put a not important in there. Not important allows you to kind of, you know, I think it works with the CSS prioritization. So if you see something not working, maybe adding this could help you. But the most important things that you have to understand is the fact that your CSS needs this keyword here, : deep. And then once you have that, you have to make sure that your main layout has not the main layout, my bad. The underscore layout has this in this order plus the global CSS and your template that refers to your project name. So project name .styles.css. I didn't pull this out of my, you know. This I did though, but there's nothing in it and it doesn't work for some reason. I couldn't get it to work. So if you're looking for some global CSS, too bad. I could give you the CSS isolation stuff to make that work. And in case if that doesn't work, remember that if you are doing those customizations, to put it within divs or spans. It has to be within some sort of HTML for this to actually take. If not, then your last resort is to use style directly inline, or I guess you could do something like this. I haven't actually tried this, so this is gonna be, I'm either gonna look real smart or I'm either gonna look real dumb. Put it so it should look the same as to what I showed you before, so like barely a change. It shouldn't take up the CSS isolation. I shouldn't see a red border here. Perfect. So yeah, you could do something like that too. You could always make a string literal within the code and then call that down here in your style itself. And then in case you need to work with this, go to the bottom to the CSS utilities, and this will explain to you how to do a bunch of CSS stuff. And as an added bonus to all of this, I will give you this. Because I saw one of you had a question about how to do something specific within Mudblazor, specifically when it comes to the ButtonFab. So one of you wanted the ButtonFab at the bottom of the bottom right corner of the app. So this is how I did mine. Position fixed bottom right. This is for the right one. For the left one, you don't need it. Margin right, 16 pixels, Z index 1. I copied and pasted this from somewhere. But essentially what's happening is that you're switching the position to fixed. You're using the bottom class to have it like above the bottom by 10 pixels. This is setting it to the right. And then you have a margin of 16 pixels there with a Z index of 1, which is the elevation kind of above the screen basically. And the same thing is happening here, except we don't have any of the right classes in there. So if I were to run this now, you should see two buttons all the way at the bottom of the screen within this page. Left and inline. Oh, I didn't call it right. Oh, whatever. But yeah. These are buttons too, so they're going to follow the CSS isolation. However, it did take up the style, so you could actually combine them if they don't run over each other. That's another thing. So there's lots of things you can do, and you are still able to customize the Mudblazor stuff. The problem is that it's kind of clunky, but you can do it as long as you're able to set up your project to do it, like I did mine. And don't give yourself a headache trying to look through all the different people having issues with this. If you're having a problem, just look through what I'm doing here. Specifically, the most important steps being adding your own CSS within the www root. In the layout page, having things in this order. So if you want, pause it right here. Make sure that this exists because this was taken out of the project for some reason. And make sure that this is in the name of your project. And whatever you're trying to apply the CSS to, make sure that it is within an HTML element, whether it's a div or a span, it doesn't really matter, as long as within some sort of HTML so that it actually takes it up. And if all else fails, you always have the inline style that you can do either like this directly in it, or you can use it as a string literal. Makes no difference. But that is my CSS isolation lesson. That is my lesson how to modify and customize Mudblazor components when you need to do something very specific, or when there's something you can't find Mudblazor being able to do for you. Mudblazor offers a lot of customizations itself, and I would always tell you to use the classes that they offer. It works better than trying to do something customized like this. But in case you have to do it, because it does come up sometimes, you have a few options out there. And yes, there is an issue with the CSS stuff that you can implement. But by doing what I showed you, you can implement CSS isolation. This helps someone out there, because I know this has been a hot topic when it comes to Blazor and Mudblazor specifically, when it comes to CSS and modifying it. So if you see that I did something wrong or whatever, let me know. And if you have any suggestions for videos, I would love to hear that. Or if you just want to tell me that I'm wrong about something, I want to hear that too. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you want to see another video on Mudblazor or whatever, and check out something right here, I'll put something random just for you. Because, you know, I'm always thinking of you. Always. All right, whatever. Get out.